Listen up, wankers. Metacritic has changed the way that user reviews work, so I'm going to talk to you about that. Yo, wankers. Sorry about that insulting start to the video. I just thought you'd all respect me more if I were a little more aggressive. Anyway, Metacritic user reviews. Long a source of consternation and entertainment. They're a way for people to give their favourite games 10s and their least favourite games 0s. Those are the only numbers that mean a shit in the Metacritic user reviews section. So many of you will know what Metacritic is. It's a review aggregate. It compiles review scores from around the world and tells you, in a general overview sense, what critics think about a game or a movie or whatever on average. Metacritic does cover movies, like I just said, as well as games, but the video game industry and the video game community is particularly obsessed, weirdly so, with Metacritic, behaving as if this site, a mere collector of scores, is somehow itself the arbiter of quality. It is exactly how you find out whether your favourite video games are great or perfect. In my dealings with Metacritic, not even Metacritic thinks it's that vital, it's that important, it's that life or death, but video game publishers have historically determined whether developers get bonuses based on a Metacritic score, and that's nothing compared to what certain communities will do. If a review scores a game a little lower than other reviews, then some communities will dogpile that reviewer for, in their opinion, driving down the Metacritic score, as if that fucking matters. As if that matters enough to be any sort of crime. And I'm not saying Nintendo fans are especially bad at that. I'm just saying that community annoys me more than the others when they do it. But the user reviews, now that's where the real sugar comes from. The user review section is it's a section on Metacritic where any user can review a game. It's not just for the professional critics anymore. The power is yours at last. Captain Planet got it right. And how have the users utilized that power? Well, you've heard of the concept of the Metabomb, I'm sure, especially if you've followed this channel for any length of time. Metabombing is where users get angry at a game and voice that displeasure by going onto Metacritic's user review system and then burying the game in question under an avalanche of zeros. Sometimes a metabombing is righteous. I've often been amused by some of them when they're in response to shitty business practices. You know, if EA puts some predatory monetization in a game and it really fucks with the game and ruins it, and people go on Metacritic and just tear into it, that's quite funny. But then sometimes the metabombing comes from a place of petulance. I mean, I've got plenty of critiques of The Last of Us Part 2, and none of them include, oh, it's SJW propaganda because there's a gay character and a trans character in it. And don't try and deny it, that's what a lot of those user reviews say. They come from that weird little subset of gamers who are obsessed with keeping politics out of video games while doing very politically motivated things like metabombing a game for having queer characters in it. But who gets to arbitrate what's a good metabombing and a bad metabombing? Some would say it's all bad, some would say it should all be considered fair game, you know? For me, it's a case-by-case basis, but then I don't run Metacritic, and Metacritic has the unenviable task of trying to make this all work. One fact is indisputable: there's no nuance in the Metacritic user review section. They drown in 10s or zeros. In the case of a metabombing, you'll often see the massive avalanche of zeros. Then fans of the game will come in with an avalanche of 10s, and then what use is that? No use whatsoever. And it's not helped by the fact that many of these metabombings occur hours, if not moments, minutes, seconds after a game launches. Basically, the second that the user reviews open, people who you would imagine should be playing the game are instead on the internet saying the game is rubbish. And that is certainly a big part of the issue. How many of these user reviews are actually ingenuous? What's the direct opposite of disingenuous? I mean, you could say authentic or sincere, but I wanted the genuous version of disingenuous. Why is there a gap in my vocabulary? There's never a gap in my vocabulary. So the question remains, which reviews are and are not disingenuous? Well, the reviews that occur minutes after a game launches, we can safely say most of those will have come from people who haven't played the game and aren't interested in playing the game. They just want to stir some shit. So Metacritic's hit upon really the only compromise it can here. It's delaying the time between when a game launches and when user reviews can be published. Users will now have to wait roughly 36 hours after a game comes out before they can drown it in zeros and tens. In this way, Metacritic hopes that more user reviewers will play a game before they give you their opinion. In fact, when user reviews tried to share their opinion of Ghost of Tsushima, which launched last week, there was a message telling them when they could come back, and that message also said, please spend time playing the game, which would definitely help someone form an opinion of a game. If indeed they do want to give you their opinion of a game and aren't just joining a dog pile, and that's one of the issues with this delay. It's an attempt at compromise, but it's not gonna stop bad actors from acting bad, it's just gonna delay them. Although that may itself have some merit. I mean, if they're just in it for the dog pile, they may get bored in that 36-hour period. That's a long time in the internet, and you can find plenty to be outraged about in that space of time. Of course, the other issue with this is, what if a game does something really, really shitty, other reviews maybe don't bring it up, like the professional ones don't bring it up, and we've seen examples of that recently, and the community has to set about telling itself, telling other prospective customers content in a game that they might find troubling, or they might have an issue with, or there's some monetary system, some business decision, just something the game does that's fucking garbo, and people should hear about it. And, as I've discussed recently, we have a press that, while it features some real good journalists, on the whole, as an establishment, doesn't offer much challenge to the industry. And in some situations, I have seen cases of metabombing that comes about as a result of a community that's been screaming at a publisher that won't listen to them, and a press that won't go to bat for them. And while user review sections on Metacritic and Steam may be a petty place to protest, it's about the only place you can have a voice that the publisher might actually give a tiny bit of a shit about. They don't care about your Reddit posts, and they sure as hell don't care about your boycotts. They know they can shovel their shit to the masses, but they don't like seeing low numbers surrounded by little red circles. So it's a thorny issue, and I do think Metacritic has hit upon the best compromise it can, at least without restricting user reviews as to be almost entirely pointless. I mean, more pointless than they are now. Although really, that last point is the ultimate point. User reviews on Metacritic don't matter. Now, user reviews as a concept, they're not pointless. They can be valuable on Steam. Sometimes Steam can see insincere dogpiling as well, but on the whole, I have found user reviews on Steam to have some merit, some value, and the way that Steam charts the history of user reviews allows you to see dips and chart and work out why those dips occur. And the same can be said for reviews on Amazon. I mean, sometimes again, there are dogpiles. Sometimes people do a whole bunch of joke reviews for weird products they find, but on the whole, like, if I want to buy a vacuum cleaner, I can go to Amazon and find out generally what customers thought of their vacuum cleaners. A big budget AAA video game with a hint of controversy or console exclusivity to it? Fucking forget it, mate. Any game that evokes strong conflicting opinions from the general public will have a user review section that is functionally useless outside of pointing and laughing at. So Metacritic could allow user reviews to still go up seconds after launch, they could delay them 36 hours, they could nuke the whole thing, and ultimately, I don't think we'd lose much in the way of valued critique. Nonetheless, there is not enough accountability in the game industry, especially for big budget AAA publishers. So I am always a little bit leery when I see even pointless measures of accountability restricted. I guess we'll see how it goes, but ultimately I don't think it's going to change anything. I think it's just going to delay the inevitable. Which, to be honest, is on theme for 2020, so go at it, Metacritic. Fill your boots.